So we learned that a function is a rule that assigns exactly one output value for each input. And so if you don't remember that, we haven't used that terminology in a while. Remember that a function f is like a machine, right? I'm going to have an input, which is usually the x value. I have my function, which is some sort of rule, add 3, subtract 2, whatever the rule is, and then it spits out an output value, which is the y. So this is the input, and this is the output. And we say a function is like a machine because, like this little pen cap that I have in my hand, it started off as little plastic pebbles. It goes into the machine, it melts the plastic and puts it in a mold. So it goes in one way and comes out another. Okay. So anyways, we learned that. And then a transformation is a function that describes a change in the position, size, and shape of the figure. The input of a transformation is a pre-image, and the output of the transformation is the image. A translation is a transformation that slides the figure along a straight line. So a translation doesn't necessarily change the shape of the pre-image. They're basically the same shape and size. It just moves it. So sometimes you'll hear people call it a slide or a glide because you're taking the object and you're just kind of moving it. Okay. So let's look at this, and then I'm going to explain some stuff in context. So it says that the triangle shown on the grid is a pre-image or the input value. All right. So when we look at this graph over here, the blue triangle is your pre-image. Okay. So notice that for my triangle, and I'm going to show you some notation. Triangle, maybe I should do it in that exact color. Yeah, so that way you guys won't get confused. We'll do it in blue. So the triangle A, B, C is the pre-image. So the thing you end up with is always the image. Pre means before, right? So the arrow shows the motion of the translation of how A, notice that there's no apostrophe, to this is pronounced, well, I probably shouldn't circle it with that color. This is pronounced, we'll do red. This is pronounced A prime. So when you see an apostrophe, you're supposed to say A prime. So when Mr. Adams is going to do all this work, anytime you see that little apostrophe, I'll say A prime. That's referring to the image, the final product. So we're going to do a bunch of these transformations. The first thing we're going to do is translations. Then we'll talk about a bunch of other stuff. Then when you take geometry in 2 years, this is what you'll do most of the year. Well, not most of it, like the first quarter. Okay. So anyways, it says trace the triangle ABC on a piece of paper, cut it out, and then trace it. We don't really need to do that. We don't have time to do it. I don't want to do it right now. I'm just going to show you how to graph it. So one thing that you could do for the translation is you can look and see, what did I do to go from A to get to A prime? Well, I went down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And then I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I went down 5, and I went over this way 7. Okay. Now I'm going to erase that. If you wrote that in pen, you could leave it in there if you want to. All right. And then we'll talk about what this means numerically in a second. So if I wanted to graph the image, I would go to point B, and I would go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I would go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's where B is. Then I would do the same thing for C. I would go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so to label this, this would be B prime, B apostrophe, and this would be C prime. And then I just connect the dots. So I would come in here and just connect the dots. So I go from here and connect that to there. And so notice that the triangle is the exact same size, the exact same shape as the original. I just glided it over. I just slid it over. And that's called a translation. So now we want to sit. What did we do? Well, we moved 7 units to, we moved 7 units to the right, and we moved 5 units down. Now, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a precursor of what that means. What is this point right here for point A? 1,11, right? 1,11, because this is 1, and way up here is 11. What do you think A prime is? Yeah, it's 8, 6. So what I want you to think about is, what's 1 plus 7? 8. What's 11 minus 5? 6. So at some point, we won't actually graph it. We could just add and subtract the numbers. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Any questions? Thumbs up, thumbs down on this? Okay. All right, let's keep moving. So it says, how is the orientation of the triangle affected by the translation? It's not. Now, do you know what they mean when they say orientation? Yeah, well, it has to do with, yeah, it's not twisted or turned. It's the same shape. It's the same size, right? So it's not affected at all. In fact, you could say it stays the same. So when you go to do the PSAT and they say, look at this transformation, which is a similar word but different, if it's the same size and the same orientation, then you know it's a translation, because it'll say, what type of transformation is this? And it'll say, is it a translation? Is it a rotation? Right? Is it a dilation? And based on the orientation, you have an answer. It stays the same. Cool. All right, so let's move on to the second activity. Actually, I'm going to pause there because I don't want the video to be too long.